Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Positive Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Parmis, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to listen to more episodes like this one on self-improvement, mindset, and wellness, go ahead and hit that follow button to join the family. It's actually pretty late tonight. I took an everything shower and decided to start recording while I'm winding down tonight. I have my peppermint tea, my hair is still wet, and I'm definitely a little bit more zen than usual, but I think that's great for today's episode. And also wanted to shout out the top 5 cities that you guys are listening from, since so many of you guys liked the shout out last time. So thank you so much for everyone that tuned into last week's episode. Our top 5 cities actually ended up being Houston, Dallas, Montreal, Sydney, and Las Vegas. So if you guys are tuning in from there, you guys made it to my top 5. But anyways, today I'm going to dive into something a lot of us struggle with, which is laziness. Sometimes it's like we've got an endless to-do list sitting there patiently waiting, and all we can do is stare at it like it's written in some foreign language. Or maybe we try to jump in and halfway through one task, we start scrolling on social media and wonder where our entire afternoon went. Probably sounds familiar, right? Because it definitely does to me. I've been there. In fact, let's be honest, I still end up there sometimes. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've cracked some big universal secret about productivity or that I have the perfect daily routine. This really isn't about me preaching from some mountain peak of discipline. No, I am just another person. I'm just another girl who's trying to figure out how to push through lazy spells and get more meaningful stuff done. And in that process, I've discovered a few things, some practical and some more mindset related, that actually help me stop spinning my wheels. So what I want to do today is walk you through 4 major points that have helped me tackle laziness and build a more productive life. And it's going to be a mix of stuff, some real talk, some step-by-step tips, a bit of reflection, and, a few personal anecdotes. But basically, we'll explore how laziness can disguise itself under stress, fear, or that sneaky little sidekick called procrastination. And we're going to talk about micro steps for tackling tasks that feel huge and, the importance of setting up your environment so it actually works with you instead of against you. And I'll also share a bit about finding your deeper why and sustaining momentum once you've built up that very first spark. So if that sounds useful, then grab a coffee, pop those headphones in, or lounge comfortably. I don't really mind, but let's get into it. As long as you're ready to pick up a few tips that might make your day more fulfilling, that's really all that matters. I'm here to help nudge you out of a lazy loop and into a headspace where you actually want to do those tasks that you've been avoiding. So let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to point out, which is probably the most important thing that you should always keep in mind, is that being lazy is actually a privilege. And I don't say that to shame you. I actually think a lot of things are a privilege and we forget about it sometimes, but this is just a reminder that some people are forced by their circumstances to be relentless, to hustle, to scrape by and survive. They can't afford to be lazy. Others of us have a cushion. We can decide whether to work on that project or watch endless videos. And if you do have that choice, it is up to you to use it wisely. Otherwise, life, it has a way of forgetting you exist. So keep that in mind next time you deliberately decide to be lazy rather than do something productive. All right, let's start from the top. What do we even mean by laziness? Because sometimes I think we throw that word around way too casually. Like, I'm just lazy, or he's too lazy to do it. It's almost like a blanket statement we use to label ourselves or others when we can't find the drive to do stuff. But here's something that I've learned. Laziness is rarely about not caring at all. Often it's about feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, or disconnected from our goals. For instance, think about the last time you were called lazy. Maybe it was a teacher in school or your parents or even a friend, or maybe it's just that nagging voice in your head that calls you lazy every time you skip a workout or binge watch an entire Netflix series. Because in my experience, when I step back and analyze those moments, I usually notice a pattern. I wasn't just lazy. I was either anxious about failing at something or feeling unprepared or simply didn't understand what exactly I needed to do. Or maybe I was just genuinely so tired mentally or physically that I just had zero bandwidth left for the new task. And if we think about laziness as an unchangeable character trait, it can feel very crippling. I'm lazy, therefore I can't do anything about it. That's a total dead end. But what if we redefine laziness as, say, a symptom of deeper issues like a lack of clarity, overwhelming tasks, or not feeling personally invested? Then we actually have something we can work with. We can ask ourselves, why do I feel lazy? Am I exhausted? Or am I scared of failing? Or am I just not connected to what I'm supposed to do? Let's imagine you have to write a long report for work or school. If you keep putting it off and calling yourself lazy, that doesn't really help, does it? It just makes you feel crummy about yourself, and it'll just put you in this negative spiral. But if you realize, actually, I'm overwhelmed because I don't know where to start or how to structure this report, then that's something you can fix. You can break it down into smaller sections, research a bit, maybe reach out to a friend or colleague who's done something similar, and then come back with a clearer plan. The moment you start taking those little steps, that's when lazy feelings begin to lift. Now, here's another twist. Sometimes we hide behind the label lazy because it's safer than admitting we're scared. If I say I'm too lazy to learn a new skill, what I might really be saying is, I'm afraid I'll be bad at it and I don't want to look stupid. Laziness can become a shield that protects our egos, but we end up stuck in the same place, never really trying, never really risking anything. Understanding that helps you see laziness less as a fundamental flaw and more as a natural response to uncertainty and vulnerability. Once you see that, you can address it more directly. For me, a really big aha moment was realizing that certain tasks I labeled unimportant or boring were actually just tasks I wasn't sure I could do well. I'd push them off or do them half-heartedly because deep down, I felt insecure about my abilities. Owning that feeling was really scary at first. I won't lie, but it was also really liberating because suddenly I had to reason to face my fears. I tell myself, you're not lazy, you're just nervous. So let's find a way to make this more doable. And if you're listening to this and you have that dread in your stomach about something you've been putting off, maybe it's, updating your resume or applying for a new job or taking that first step into a healthier lifestyle. Ask yourself, what is really fueling that sense of laziness? Really give it some thought. Are you unsure how to do it? Then maybe you need research, mentorship, or guidance. Are you worried you're going to fail or look silly? Then maybe you need to start with something smaller, less intimidating, to build that confidence. By reframing how we see laziness, we give ourselves the power to do something about it. So the next time you find yourself labeling your behavior as lazy, pause. Ask, is it really laziness or is there something else going on? That small change in your mindset can open the door to practical solutions. Instead of beating yourself up, you start thinking of ways to get unstuck. And you might be surprised at how often laziness is just a disguise for other issues. I can promise you. And you're also going to realize how solving those issues frees up your motivation almost automatically. All right, that's the first big point. Let's move on to the second one, which is all about taking tiny baby steps. Because often what keeps us lazy is that feeling that our tasks are the size of a literal mountain. Once we break them down, they become much less intimidating. And I know you've probably heard this before, but I'm going to break it down for you in a way that's going to stick. So let's talk about micro steps. This for me was the most life-changing step I took to become more productive and less lazy. I still use this method to this very day, and I honestly wouldn't be able to get through my days without it. You've probably heard advice like just do a little bit every day, which can sound cliche, but I want to dig deeper into why tiny manageable steps actually work and how to do them in a way that feels real, not forced or cheesy. So first off, when we think about a big project, our brains often react like it's the final exam of our entire life. Big, scary, and with the potential to go really, really wrong. So we freeze up. We do anything but that huge looming task because tackling it head on feels like jumping into an icy lake. I know the feeling. But guess what? If we tell ourselves we only need to dip a toe in the water, it becomes a lot easier. An example, let's say you want to clean your entire apartment. The idea of scrubbing the floors, doing the laundry, organizing your closet, washing the dishes, and vacuuming can feel like an all-day affair. That's overwhelming. It would be overwhelming for me too, especially if you're not used to that level of cleaning. So instead, what you're going to do is try telling yourself, I'm just going to clean the kitchen sink. That's it. That's all. One tiny step. If after that you feel like you've had enough, you can stop. But what usually happens is once you do that one small thing, you get a little burst of accomplishment. Like, hey, that wasn't so bad. And often you'll think I might as well tackle the dishes too while I'm here. Suddenly, you're cleaning more than just the sink now. And before you know it, you're on a roll. The magic of micro steps lies in reducing the mental friction. We no longer see a massive mountain to climb. We just see a little hill. So we actually start. And starting is often the hardest part of it all. It's that initial push, the energy it takes to go from a standstill to moving, that trips us up. So if the push is smaller, like maybe writing just one paragraph of that report instead of the entire thing, your brain goes, all right, that's doable. No problem at all. In my own life, I can't tell you how many times I've used this micro step approach without even realizing it. For instance, when I first started to manage my content creation with my 9-to-5, I didn't say I'm going to film, edit, and post a podcast episode, Instagram reel, and YouTube video all while working my day job. That would have scared me away immediately. Instead, what I did is I started with, I'm going to film a video today for Instagram. That's it. Just one part of the main task. If I felt extra energy after that, I'd go a little further and edit the video too. But if not, at least I did that small little task. Over time, I actually became more efficient, and guess what? I eventually wanted to push further. I started filming multiple pieces of content per day for multiple different platforms, and it felt natural, not like some forced routine. Now, this principle applies to studying, learning a new skill, or even building a side hustle. Let's say you want to launch an online store. That's a big undertaking. You might procrastinate for months, always talking about it, but never doing it. Instead, what if you said, today, I am just going to brainstorm a name for the store. That's all. Then tomorrow you might say, I'm going to research how to create a simple website. Each small step builds on the previous one. You stack these tiny wins until you suddenly find yourself well into your project. Now, a critical piece of this puzzle is acknowledging your small wins. If you do the small thing and then go, that's nothing, you lose the motivational boost. You want to pause for a moment and give yourself a mental high five. It doesn't even have to be mental. It can actually be real. Give yourself a pat on the back. You don't have to throw a party for every 2-sentence email you write, but you do want to consistently remind yourself, hey, I did something today that I didn't do yesterday. That's progress. Because success is often about consistent progress, not about the random bursts of superhuman effort. Here's another small tip. If you're a fan of to-do lists, consider making your tasks micro. If you guys were to see my to-do list, you guys would be shocked at how long it is because I have so many micro tasks. So instead of listing clean apartment, you're going to list clean kitchen sink, wash dishes, wipe counters, vacuum living room, and so on. This way, every time you finish one of those tasks, you get to check it off, which gives you that dopamine hit of accomplishment. It is so satisfying. It might sound silly, but it works. Our brains love that sense of completion. Sometimes we resist micro steps because it feels too small or like we're shortchanging ourselves. We think, I need a massive transformation or I need to finish this entire project in one day. But that's often a recipe for feeling overwhelmed and doing nothing. Embracing smaller steps doesn't mean you don't have big ambitions. It just means you're smart about how you get there. So if you've been calling yourself lazy, try this approach. Pick one task you've been avoiding, make it absurdly tiny, something you can do in a few minutes, literally a few minutes. Then see how you feel once you've done it. If you're ready for more, go for it. If not, enjoy the fact that you've broken the cycle of doing nothing. Over time, those micro steps add up in a very big way. I can promise you that. All right, I hope that sparked some ideas because next up we're going to talk about how your environment plays a huge role in encouraging or discouraging laziness and how to set things up so your surroundings practically beg you to be more productive. So we're moving on to the physical and mental environment we create for ourselves. People often underestimate how much our surroundings influence our behavior. You might say, well, I should have had the discipline to ignore distractions. But let's be real. If your phone is lighting up every 2 minutes and your desk is a mess and your couch is right there looking extra cozy, it is really easy to slip into laziness. I first noticed the power of environment when I tried to eat healthier. I would buy all sorts of healthy stuff, but I'd shove it in the back of the fridge. Meanwhile, my parents were grocery shopping for snacks like pastries and chocolates for my brother, and it would be front and center in my kitchen calling out to me every time I walked by. So guess what I ended up eating most of the time? Yeah, the chocolate. It wasn't that I lacked willpower entirely though. I just set myself up in a way that made it way too easy to grab that junk food. When I reversed that, put healthy food at eye level, prepped fruits in clear containers, and placed the cookies in a hard to reach spot, I found myself eating way better, almost without trying. And I had to have that conversation with my family. I had to tell them I really needed their support in this new design of our environment. Now, that's a small example, but the principle applies broadly. If you're trying to curb phone distractions, put your phone in another room or at least silence the notifications. Use your do not disturb feature. If you want to read more, leave a book on your nightstand or on the couch instead of burying it in your drawer. If you, want to start writing daily, rearrange your desk so your laptop or notebook is immediately accessible, and keep sticky notes around with prompts or ideas. Essentially, you want to reduce the friction between you and the action you want to take and increase the friction between you and the things you want to avoid. Your environment isn't just about the physical stuff, though. It's also your mental or digital environment. Are you subscribed to a bunch of apps that ping you all day? Do you have social media tabs open all the time? Because that's part of your environment too. You can tweak these settings to be less distracting. For instance, I turned off nearly all my notifications on my phone except calls and essential texts during work hours, and it was life-changing. Suddenly, I'm not jumping at every ping or buzz, especially as a content creator. And because of this, my phone became less of a shiny object, stealing my attention. Now, a lot of us work remotely or have side gigs we handle from home, and this blurring of lines between our personal space and workspace can breed laziness. You wake up, you're already at work, but you're also in your pajamas, your bed is right there, Netflix is just a tab away. It's a minefield of distractions. But one simple fix could be setting up a specific area, even if it's a corner of your dining room table, that you only use for work. Keep it tidy, keep your tools there, and when you sit down, you mentally switch into work mode. That mental association can help you stay on track. Or if you're up and ready to work, switch out of your pajamas, brush your hair, do a little bit of makeup, spritz some perfume. I promise you will switch into work mode a lot easier. On days where I know I can't afford to slack off, I will 100% do this, and it will 100% make a huge difference every single time. Remember, the goal isn't to make your space feel boring. You still want it to be comfortable and reflective of your personality, but you want to be intentional about what's around you, so it makes you want to do things rather than loaf around. You want to create an environment that feels energizing and supportive. Now, one final note. Changing your environment can feel daunting, especially if you're in a small space or sharing it with others. But even small tweaks like a dedicated desk drawer for your supplies, a rule about phone placement during work hours, or a habit of tidying up each night can have such a big impact. Try experimenting and see what works for you. Everyone's environment is different, and you'll have to figure out your sweet spot by trial and error. The key is understanding that your surroundings matter and investing the effort to shape them so they're on your side, not dragging you down. Next step is, how do we keep going once we've started? That's where understanding your deeper why and sustaining momentum come into play. We've talked about reframing laziness, taking micro steps, and creating a better environment. Now the question is, how do we keep this momentum from fizzling out? Because let's be real, it's easy to get super motivated for 1 week and then fall right back into old patterns. The key, though, is to connect your actions to something that genuinely matters to you, your deeper why. Now, what do I mean by why? It's that bigger purpose or goal that fires you up. And it doesn't have to be some grand world-changing mission. It really doesn't. It could be as personal as wanting to have more energy to play with your kids or to feel happier and healthier in your daily life. Maybe it's about achieving financial stability so you can finally take care of your family in the way you've always wanted. Or perhaps you want the freedom to travel the world. The point is that your why should resonate with you on such an emotional level, strong enough to get you off the couch when motivation is diminishing. So when you're clear on why you're doing something, it's way easier to push through the inevitable tough days. If your why is strong, like you really want to change your life for the better, you're going to find ways to keep going even when the initial excitement fades. If your why is weak, like you're only doing something because someone else told you to, chances are you're going to revert back to old habits eventually. One exercise you can do is to take a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and jot down your top 3 reasons for wanting to be less lazy and more productive. Then, whenever you're tempted to blow things off, look at that list. It might sound small, but sometimes that little reminder is all you need to pivot away from procrastination. Now, even with a powerful why, you're gonna hit rough patches. Life happens. It happens to me. It happens to my friends. It happens to my family. You might have a bad week at work or get sick or just feel burnt out. This is where the concept of sustaining momentum comes in. One way to do that is by celebrating milestones along the way. If your goal is to lose 20 pounds, don't wait until you've lost all 20 to acknowledge your progress. If you lose 5, that's worth a little celebration or at least a pat on the back. These micro rewards fuel you to keep going. Another strategy is to review your progress regularly. That might mean doing a weekly check-in with yourself. Ask, what went well this week? What can I improve? This keeps you from drifting off course. It also forces you to notice your wins, which is crucial for maintaining motivation. If you never take time to see how far you've come, you can lose track of why you're doing all this in the first place. I personally do this multiple times a week and I absolutely love it. It's like I'm my biggest project. I analyze what I'm doing, what I can be doing better, and what I can change to reach my goals faster and more efficiently. It's also important to acknowledge that motivation is cyclical. Sometimes you'll be pumped and unstoppable. Other times you'll feel sluggish. That's normal. The trick is to not label those times as total failure. See them as parts of the process and know that you can bounce back if you stick to the habits you've built. That's another reason micro habits and routine are so helpful. They can carry you through low motivation periods. Even if you're not feeling the fire in your belly, you might still brush your teeth, do your quick workout, or write for 15 minutes simply because it's ingrained. Finally, you're going to give yourself some grace. We are all human. We all slip up. Productivity isn't about being a robot. It's about finding a rhythm that works for you and keeps you moving forward toward the life you want. If you mess up, skip a day, or even a week, that doesn't make you lazy forever. It just means you're having a moment. Remind yourself why you started. Pick yourself up and take one step forward. By linking everything, your reframed understand of laziness, micro steps, supportive environment, to a strong personal why, you create a sustainable system. You're not relying on fleeting bursts of motivation. You're building a lifestyle that gently pushes you to keep going, even when the going gets tough. And that's how you truly break the cycle of laziness and maintain productivity over the long haul. With that, we've covered 4 major points. So I'm going to wrap up our conversation with a quick recap. The first point we went over is understanding the real laziness. It's often a mask for fear, overwhelm, or uncertainty. So recognize this and you can tackle the underlying issue instead of beating yourself up. Then we went over point number 2, embracing micro steps and small wins. Big tasks can be paralyzing, so break them down into bite-sized pieces and celebrate each small victory to build momentum. Then we went over point number 3, which is designing an environment that fuels action. Whether physical or digital, your surroundings make or break your productivity, so arrange things so it's easier to do what you need to do and harder to waste time. And lastly, we went over point number 4, which is sustaining momentum and finding your why. Know the bigger purpose behind your goals. Regularly review your progress, celebrate milestones, and remember that it's okay to stumble. Just don't stay down. Ultimately, being lazy isn't about becoming a perfect, hyper-efficient machine. It's about getting honest with yourself, making small but meaningful changes, and staying connected to the reason you started. If you try even one of these tips, you're going to see a difference in how you approach your tasks and goals. And if you integrate all of them over time, you might just find that lazy isn't a label you'll need anymore. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you feel energized and maybe even a little bit excited about stepping out of your comfort zone and getting stuff done. I promise you got this. And remember, it's not about being motivated 24/7, but about building habits and routines that carry you forward even when you don't feel like it. But that is a wrap. I do hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please leave a review. Your feedback means so much to me. The more people this podcast reaches, the bigger the positive impact we make. So I'd love it if you could do that for me. Also, if you guys have any recommendations as to what you'd like me to talk about in future episodes, definitely let me know, because I'm 100% open to recording what you guys want to hear. And if you don't know yet, I do monthly giveaways where a random person will be selected from those of you who did leave a review. The written reviews can be done over on Apple Podcasts and the ratings can be done on Spotify. Just send me a screenshot once you've done so and you'll be eligible to win. The winner will be announced on Instagram at Positive Proof Podcast. And if you want an extra entry into the giveaway, make sure to share this podcast or episode via socials and tag me at Parmis and again at Positive Proof Podcast on Instagram. To everyone else, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you so much. And I can't wait to chat with you again in next week's episode. Lots of love, Parmis.